killer pasta dish incoming. As we start with pumpkin puree. This is what I had left over from the last episode where I made pumpkin pancakes. So let's see what we can do with this. I took some all-purpose flour and made a pile of it on the countertop. I'm not measuring anything here because I like to make my pasta by feel rather than by recipe. This is a few cups worth, I would say. I did turn down the exposure a bit because often the white flour is hard to see with the lighting. Not sure that I really needed to do that though. Then I added some semolina flour to it. Mix it together a bit. You don't have to be too perfect about this. I didn't think I had enough semolina for my liking, so I added a little bit more. I'd say the ratio was about 1/3 semolina to 2/3 all-purpose flour. Then just make a well in the middle of it using your hands. It's much faster to do this in a food processor, but I like to do this by hand. First thing to go in is a bit of kosher salt, maybe a teaspoon worth or so. Then a nice drizzle of some olive oil. I then added some fresh pumpkin puree. It probably was about 1.5 cups, but I'm going on instinct here. To see how this puree was made, make sure to check out my last video where I made pumpkin pancakes. But if you don't want to go to the trouble, just use canned pumpkin puree, that will be fine. Then I cracked in 2 whole eggs. Although I didn't need to use it this time, whenever you make pasta by hand, it's always a good idea to keep some water nearby in case you need to add some moisture while forming the dough. And also, always keep extra flour on standby at all times. Start mixing it in the middle first. I've seen lots of people like to use a fork here to start off, but I'm a firm believer in going by feel, and a fork doesn't have any nerve endings, so use your hands like this. Working outwards and incorporating more flour little at a time, the stickiness will subside after a while and a cohesive ball of dough will start to form. The trick is not to add too much flour at once. If it starts to crumble on you, that's what the water is for, and vice versa. If it's too wet and sticky, keep adding more flour in slowly. When you have a pretty stable ball of dough, you must knead it for 7 to 10 minutes, depending on how aggressive you are with your kneading. When kneading, don't just smash it down because it will stick to the counter. It's more of a roll and smash motion. At a higher frame speed, you can see that I'm rolling the dough forward as I smash it down. As you knead away, you will notice a nice texture starting to form, and it will feel much more springy to the touch. After about 7 minutes or so, you will have a nice ball of pasta dough, in this case with pumpkin flavor inside. Make sure to violently spike it down on the counter for dramatic effect as you frantically clean up the set for the next shot without allowing enough time for the dough to dry out, so that you can take some plastic wrap sprayed with non-stick baking spray and wrap the ball to sit in the fridge until you are ready to use it. Now, some people say you need to let this rest in the fridge for at least 30 minutes. I say you don't need to do that, since I let it sit in the fridge for about 5 minutes. Just long enough actually for me to go get my pasta machine and get down to it. Always lightly flour your work surface before starting to work with dough. I'm only going to need about half of this dough here, so the other half will be just fine sitting under a damp paper towel till after I'm done doing this. Then I can wrap that up. I'm using my hand to flatten it enough to fit into the pasta roller. You can use a rolling pin, but it's not necessary here. Make sure to keep adding flour to the outside of it if you notice it's sticking to anything. Flour is your best friend when making pasta by hand. I'm going to cut the music here and bring it more into real time. The pasta roller is set to its widest setting, and the dough will be fed through 3 times to start on that setting, like so. Always add a small amount of flour to the dough sheets each time. Fold the sheets in half and repeat the process 2 more times on the widest setting. Now that it's gone through the widest setting 3 times, adjust the setting a notch up to make the dough thinner. I ran it through again at the same setting just to make the sheet longer. I skipped up a couple notches to now make the sheet thinner. As you can see, the more times you run it through, the longer the sheet will get. When it gets too long for your counter space, just cut it in half to make your life easier. Depending on what kind of pasta you are making and also what your desired thickness is, will depend on when you stop running it through the machine. Once it was as thin as I wanted, I cut the sheets into segments as long as I wanted the noodles to be, and then ran it through the other side of the roller, which cuts the pasta. This is the thicker cutter because I'm going for fettuccine here. When you have some nice noodles like this, I just like to make a little nest with them. I find it easiest to work with the little nests. Make sure to always add some flour on top of them. So anyways, I ran all 4 sheets through the cutter until I had 4 little nests of some very lovely pumpkin fettuccine. Thanks so much for watching. Just kidding, everyone, geez. Yeah, let's cook these things already. So we got a pot of water that we add a bunch of salt to. Important to add salt, especially when making fresh pasta, in my opinion. Start melting some butter down in a pan. Since the pasta is pumpkin flavored, I think a savory brown butter sauce is in order. A little drizzle of olive oil works very nicely here too. Remember that the pasta only takes about 90 seconds to cook when it's this fresh, so get your sauce done first. When the butter is starting to foam, before it is brown, throw in a fresh sage leaf. Let that start doing its thing. Once the butter is starting to brown, dump in a good amount of pine nuts and they will toast in the butter. Don't burn the pine nuts. They will easily burn on you very fast, so keep the pan moving. Now is the time to add your pasta to the water. This all happens really fast. This is the color you want on your butter with that foam on top. The pine nuts are perfectly toasted here. It's been about 90 seconds and do not strain that pasta out of the water. Since it's fresh, use tongs and transfer it to the hot pan. You want some of that water to get in the pan. It's going to hiss and sizzle and complain, and that's fine. Just toss it up together. Don't overwork the pasta with the tongs. It's not like dried store-bought pasta. Now let's check this out. I do want to tell you that the flavor is amazing. There's a slight mild pumpkin flavor in the background. It's not overpowering. Super savory and delicious. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the like button for me if you don't mind. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you on the next video.